everyone, this is Ebony. I'm the Container Queen, and I decided to do a quick video on how I start my containers. A lot of people ask me this same question: what do I use in my containers? So I'll be explaining that quickly, and I'll also show you guys my grow boxes that I just set up that I brought last year. My mix is pretty simple. I use potting soil. I use composted cow manure or homemade compost. Since we moved, I don't have my compost, so I brought compost this year, and I use Black Cow brand. It's in a bright yellow bag. It's Cow's Belt with a K, not a C. And you can find it at most home improvement stores or nursery stores or whatever. But if you don't want to use that, you can use your homemade compost. Just make sure you've given it time to break down like it needs to. And I also use something to hold the moisture and the nutrients in, and which is peat moss. I use a little bit of peat moss. My ratio is probably soil. I'm going to put soil, compost, and peat moss. So 2 to 1 to maybe 1/4. I don't use a lot of peat moss. So I use mostly potting soil more than anything. And then some compost and then some peat moss. I don't have an exact amount. That's just what I use. You could just use what you feel would work best in your garden. That's what I use. It has worked for me, so I'm going to continue to use it. I just planted a yellow boy tomato in here. Of course, I've got 3 drainage holes that I drilled in this 5-gallon bucket at the bottom. You can put them on the sides of the containers. I've got them drilled at the bottom on this one. And I stress to everyone, once you plant your tomato or in a 5-gallon bucket, make sure you water them every single day. Containers need to be watered every day because they're only limited to what you can give them. So you have to keep them well fed and well watered. So that means watering every day and feeding them every 7 days with a good water-soluble fertilizer, or in this case, I'm trying something a little different. I'm using some organic tomato fertilizing spikes that I found. Job's is the brand, and they seem to be working well. The plants seem to be liking them. I like that because I don't have to worry about mixing fertilizer in a watering can every 7 days. The spikes last 3 months. They slowly dissolve as you water them. All you do is you place 2 of them on each side of the tomato plant. This is what they look like. And you just place 2 of them a little distance from the base of the plant. And you just kind of bury them in the soil. And that's it. I also have a little Epsom salt in the planting hole. Forgot that. That's optional, but I do it. It works good for me. Remember to plant your tomatoes deep. For every part of the tomato stem that's buried, it'll put out roots. So if you give it a good start, you'll get good tomatoes. So make sure you, I don't know what that is, these bugs. Make sure you plant them deep to give it a good start. And when you first plant your tomatoes, of course, tomatoes, once they put out the fruit gets heavy and it can bend the plant and break it. So you want to give your tomatoes a good support system. So always stake them when you plant them. Don't stake them afterwards because you don't want to disturb the root system. So stake them when you plant them. And then we're going to give our plant a good watering. You want to water the tomatoes like water, so water it nice and deeply when you first start it out. And that's it. Like I said, with containers, make sure you water them every day. Feed them every 7 days. Or you can try the spikes that I found, which is a little bit easier for containers because it gives it a continuous feed. But I do recommend you supplementing that fertilizer with some fish emulsion or seaweed extract. I prefer seaweed extract. And I do the seaweed extract every other week. Because containers just, I know a lot of people always ask me, I planted in containers and I didn't get any tomatoes, or I didn't get any peppers, or my plants died. And I ask them, well, what are you feeding it? Oh, I didn't feed it anything. You have to feed your container plants. Compost is just not enough. I know some people say, oh, I just use compost. Well, when you're planting in the ground already has nutrients and moisture. And when you add compost to your ground soil, it helps amend it and helps richen it. So you could probably get away with not fertilizing your plants in the ground if you really amend it and add a lot of good compost. But with containers, since they're so limited to this small amount of soil, you have to feed them. You know, you just have to. I tell people that they can't go without food. They just need something. So I'm not telling you to use organic. I'm not telling you what brand to use. I'm just telling you to make sure you keep your container grown veggies fed. They need to be fed constantly. You can either use the spikes that I'm trying this year, or you can use a water soluble fertilizer, one that dissolves in water that you mix in a watering can full of water. But make sure if you use that, make sure you feed them every 7 days. That's what I do. That's what works for me, and I get tomatoes every year. You know, container gardening, it requires a lot more attention, but not everybody has the land, the space, the means, or the energy to grow in the ground. We've got some people that are disabled and they can't bend down that farther. So the containers are perfect for them. So I just stress to people all the time to make sure that you feed your container grown veggies and water them every day. I mean, I know it takes a little time, but I mean, if you want them to succeed and do well, make sure you keep them well watered, because if you miss just 1 day of watering, especially if you live in a hot, muggy, humid climate like I do here in Mobile, you will tell the difference. You can tell the difference in your plants. Just missing 1 day of watering, your plants will struggle. So water your plants often. Depending on where you live, you might need to water them in the morning time or in the evening time. I know when we lived in Tucson, Arizona, it's dry heat out there. So when you watered your gardens or your lawn, you water them in the evening, because if you water them in the daytime, in the morning, the dry heat's going to burn the water up and burn your plants too. But here in Mobile, we have a different kind of heat. It's humid. So if you water your plants at night here in Mobile, they're going to just steam overnight, and that's when your plants are more susceptible to diseases, fungus, and mold, and bugs set in. So in this climate, it's best to water in the morning time, because you give your plants a slow time to dry out in the sun. So depending on your climate, water in the morning or water in the evening. But if you're doing containers, just make sure you water every day, especially when it gets hot. Your plants are going to thank you for it. But definitely take that in consideration when you're using containers. Remember, my mix is easy: potting soil, compost, and peat moss. That's all I use. I fertilize my plants well, I kept them fed, and I water them well. And I always have a good amount of tomatoes. So just follow those guidelines and you should succeed and do well. These are the grow boxes I was telling y'all about that I just planted. I was very, when I first brought these last year, I'm like, I wonder if these really work, because I was just I didn't really think they were going to work, because you're putting 2 tomato plants in this small amount of soil. And, I stress people that tomato plants need a lot of room because they've got big root systems. So I didn't really think these will work. These 2 containers gave me more tomatoes than my buckets. And I got a lot of tomatoes last year, but I got tons of tomatoes from these 2 grow boxes. They work very well. They come with instructions. The kit is about $30, maybe about $35 if you calculate shipping. They come with instructions. It comes with this nutrient pack, and the nutrient patch has the fertilizer underneath it. It's got that hole right there, as you can see. That's where you put the water in. You follow the instructions depending on what you're planting. You see the lines right here? If you're planting tomato plants and eggplants, you can only put 2 in the bucket. If you're planting corn, you can put a seed in every spot that you see on the mat. It comes with easy instructions to read. You plant by the spot. You see I've got this cage that I found. I need to get another one for this one. Just wraps around it to support the plants. But you can plant anything in these. Flowers, you can plant cucumbers, peppers, eggplant, tomatoes, corn, squash. I'm going to get me a couple more. But I've turned Ava's nurses on them. They've ordered them and they work. I mean, I'm impressed. You can go to their Facebook page. And I put the link underneath this video. And you can see all the other people that have used them. And they work. So I definitely think if you're, say for instance, you're in an apartment, you have limited space. Excuse me. These are great for apartments. They're great for people who are disabled. You can actually raise them up. You can put them on a table if you can't bend down that far. They really do work. So I recommend them. It's a good investment. The box lasts for years. The only thing is that you have to buy a nutrient patch every year. You can't use the same nutrient patch. But they work. I'm happy with them, and I will continue to use them every year. I might buy a couple more. We'll see. But you can see my plants are doing pretty well. It's starting to get hot, so the race is on for tomatoes. Once it gets super hot in Mobile, the plants just stop producing unless you get a good heat-tolerant tomato, which I'll probably plant within the next week. But my container's doing good. I have tomatoes over here in this area. Got some bell peppers. I'm starting jalapenos from the seed, so I'm going to wait on those. And there's got some herbs back there, thyme and rosemary, oregano, chives, and bay leaves, and basil. I love thyme. Thyme is my favorite herb. It's thyme and then basil. Those are my 2 favorite. So I planted 2 pots of thyme this year, not just 1. Because I plan on drying it to use over the winter because I love thyme. Well, it's starting to get a little warm out here. I'm going inside to get me a tall glass of water. Cold glass of water. But I'm going to end the video here. If you have any questions, you know what you can do, know what to do. You can leave me a message on my Facebook page. This is Ebony. I'm the Container Queen. I hope everybody enjoys this video and hope this encourages you to get out and plant something. I hope you have a great day and a great weekend. Thanks for watching. Bye.